Germany is the country which expressed that abolished the atomic power generation. Because the wise statesmen who recognized this danger were in the German, such a bill was adopted. But there were no countries which agreed with this in the world, including Japan. They decided that what was necessary for the generation of electricity was left unput. They thought about the atomic power generation and nuclear weapons as another thing, foolishly. They settled a conclusion that the cost to build newer power plant in place of the nucleus is more important than the crisis of the nuclear. It is regrettable that Japan didn't notice this, because it is supposed that only Japan is aware of the nuclear danger in the world. When you think about the danger of the atomic power generation, first you will remember the accident of Chernobyl, which it got up in the 1980s. All of the world trembled for fear in this accident. Then, until now, that is the territory of the death. Who will be able to guarantee it on Earth if such an accident doesn't happen from now on? Don't you notice the danger of the atomic power plant unless a country becomes the country of the death in the same way by the earthquake and so on? The unexpected situation is called an accident. Actually, some news told that there were influences with the power plants by the earthquake. It is the statesmen of that country to have the authority which decide to abolish atomic power generation or not. We must give a proper choice because we choose the statesmen. Especially the inhabitant of the prefecture who have it, they oppose to the construction of the power plant. Of course no one wants to have dangerous thing beside the residents. Then, this is the thing which each prefectures don't want to exist. Moreover, it isn't indispensable to the human being. Even if it is not atomic energy, human can get sufficient electric power. Therefore, the statesmen who have the opinion to opposite to the atomic power plant must come out to the prefecture where there is an atomic power plant. Those people bring a bill into the National Assembly. We should make the atomic power plant abolition as a country. At present, wind power, thermal power, hydroelectric and atomic energy are being used for the generation of electricity. At present, it is considering that atomic energy is effective because nuclear energy is the strongest, though we can generate electricity without it. The people of the power plant say, if we don't use atomic power generation, we can't supply electric power in all through Japan. But, in the first place, we have done much useless use of electricity. Will we have to expose mankind to the greater danger to waste the unnecessary electric power? Think about the lighting of the amusement quarter. Which is more important with mankind's life, or the lighting of the amusement area? That is obvious even if these aren't hung on the balance. There is a constitution of we don't make nuclear weapons. We don't bring in it, we don't own it, in Japan. It is by the lesson that Japan suffered damage by the nuclear weapons at the time of World War. Isn't it a strange thing that Japan possess in public the nucleus? It can be said that violation of the Constitution is being done openly. Precisely, it isn't the weapon. But the nucleus is dangerous enough even if it doesn't have the shape of the weapon. You will understand it if you are not children. But the adults who must be the existence beyond the child and statesmen can't understand it. They are nothing but foolish. Even if they graduated from the famous university, even if they have a wide knowledge, they are fools. This isn't limited to the Japanese statesmen and the adults, it is the same to the statesmen of the atomic power plants and the nuclear weapons possession countries in the world. Though this is the historical fact which was on no history book, the Earth was ruined with the nucleus once about 10,000 years ago. No human being survived on the Earth by the downfall at that time. Well, why does human being exist in the Earth at present? Because there is a story beyond the human imagination. In a word, God's errands came to the Earth and they cleaned the nuclear influence. And they made human bodies appear, and increased these. At present, there is a small quantity of radioactivity in every place on the Earth. Scientists believe that nature had radioactivity from the first. Well, where did that radioactivity come from? That was not there in the nature from the first. That is the trace when the earth was ruined before. There are people who found that proof in each place in the world. The materials that the stones changed in glass were found to many. And they say that there is a radioactive response in the Indian Mohenjo-Daro remains. In the first place, the heat which makes a stone become glass is not to rise, unless it gets up the nuclear war. And it is said that there was a similar response around Moai statue in Easter Island, Stonehenge of England, and Cappadocia as well. Well, why did mankind perish by the nucleus? Though a modern wouldn't recognize it, mankind had science civilization which surpassed a modern, about 10,000 years ago. They had the technology which created a nucleus. Then, when one country possesses a nucleus, another country comes to possess a nucleus one after another for the self-protection, too. And in the end, they doubted to each other. It came to have the nucleus in all countries in the world. Then, consequently, the whole of mankind was ruined, as if it was the mass suicide of the cult order rather than the war. They say that it is being drawn in the Indian sacred book, the Mahabharata. But even if you take the book, you won't find that description, because Mahabharata is very long and vast. And Indian myths are added by editing. Einstein said, "Next time, if war occurs, mankind will fight by the club, after that war." He said that if a global war occurs in the future, mankind will use the nuclear weapons. And world will be ruined. So the world will be returned to the ancient times. But try to think. Mankind has already come through such conditions. Several thousand years ago or several hundred years ago, mankind used the primitive weapons such as sticks and swords and bows in the war. That is because the ability of science 10,000 years ago was lost. What Einstein said was what mankind traced in the past. What modern mankind should do is to make atomic power generation abolition first. For the substitute, we make up for energy in the hydroelectric and thermal power, and wind power. Furthermore, we should develop solar electric power. After that, the countries which doubt to each other should throw away nuclear weapons. But it isn't sufficient only with that. The waste used by the atomic power generation is still buried in the ground. Officials says it is safe because it is strengthened with concrete and buried in deep in the ground. Is it right that only we are safe? We know that the landmines are dangerous unless the landmines are being removed. So the people are removing the landmines. It is not for themselves but it is for others. They are trying not to increase victims any further. It is famous that Princess Diana made effort in it. Even if nuclear wastes are hidden in anywhere, it is always dangerous. Then, we must erase the every nucleus in the ground. In other words, the research which makes the nucleus harmless is necessary by all means. It may take for several hundred years or several thousand years. But if we don't begin, we will be able to get nothing. If mankind begins that, God will send the person who can invent such a invention to the earth. In other words, the man who has such a ability will born in the future. This is being written in the Bible as a prophecy. But, even if you take the Bible, you won't find it. Because it is being written so that you can't understand it, if you don't have eyes to read it. But time to know will come, soon, later on. Then, if you change the point of view of this prophecy, you can interpret that the time will come when mankind abandon atomic power generation and the nuclear weapons.